18th meeting of the PAC. Please give your attention to the short video.
This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organizations, but providing such information is voluntary. Citizens participating in person wishing to speak should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand in Zoom or submit a public speaker card, and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Okay, Deanna, will you take the roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Anderson?
I'm here.
Chair Mark Armstrong?
Here.
Sorry. Member Josie?
I'm here.
Member Obringer?
I'm here.
Member Stepper?
Here.
Member Wilk?
Here.
Member Carlson?
Here.
Member McClellup? Here. Thank you. Member Wren?
Here.
Member Storr?
Here.
And Vice Chair Nowak?
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have several new members, actually a lot of new members. So we will go around and introduce ourselves. Jean Josie was appointed by and represents the Livermore Amador Valley Transit Authority. Jean, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I know many of you, not all of you. Jean Josie, I'm a council member in the city of Dublin, and as you stated, I'm representing LAFTA, or was appointed by LAFTA, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
I only have a handful of names, but I think most everybody here is new on this?
I'm not new.
You're not new on Innovate?
No,
Well,
I've been on it since the
Ken's not
beginning.
new. No. Matt, you're new.
I am now.
You're, okay. Matt Wren. Yeah, Matt Wren in
Yeah,
a new role.
wearing a new hat.
Yes.
It's good to,
BART director. You
I
wanna
feel like it's old
introduce
home squeak.
Yeah, it is.
Home squeak. Home sweet. Having served on formerly Pleasant Hill Council with now Supervisor Carlson and Mayor Nowak. Newly elected BART director, so looking forward to the opportunity to be here. Thank you so much.
Okay. Robert, are you new on this? No. No? Karen, you're not new?
No.
It's been so long since we had one of these advisory meetings. Oh, okay. And you're not new? Mark is?
I'm new. Hi, I'm Mark Armstrong. I'm a mayor of City of San Ramon.
Great, thank you. And Kevin Wilk is new.
I'm new. I'm Mayor Pro Tem of City of Walnut Creek, third term there, also Chair of County Connection, and I guess appointed here by TransPAC.
And Debbie McKillop.
Good evening. I'm new. I'm from Martinez, the Martinez City Council, and I'm glad to join you tonight.
All right, got through all of that. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Deanna, have we received any public comment, or is there anybody online or in the room that wishes to make a public comment?
We have not received any written or remote public comment.
All right. Then we will move on to the next item. We have one item on the consent calendar, and that is the approval of the minutes from the July 10th, 2024 meeting. Any change? Whoops. Jumping the gun, but I'll get back to you in a second.
Okay.
Any changes or comments, or anybody want to pull any item? Oh, well, pull the one item on the consent calendar? No? Okay. Now,
All right, I move approval.
Second.
thank you. We have a motion and a second. Can we have, whoops, that was. Is there, I know. Is there any public comment on the consent calendar? Remote?
We have
Written?
not received any public or
Okay.
remote comment, thank you.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Member Armstrong,
Yes.
Member Carlson,
Yes.
Member Josie,
Yes.
Member McKillop,
I wasn't present at that meeting, so I'm not certain I could vote. If I
Abstain?
can, yes.
You otherwise can abstain, whatever you would like to do.
I'll abstain.
okay, thank you. Member Obringer,
Yes.
Member Wren,
I'll have to abstain also.
Member Stepper? Yes. Member Storr?
Yes.
Member Wilk?
Abstain.
Vice Chair Noack?
Yes.
And Chair Anderson?
Yes.
Motion passes with majority with McCullough, Wren, and Member Wilks abstaining.
Okay. Thank you. We'll now move on to the first item for discussion is informational, be presented by, oh, there you are. I was like, Stephanie's gone. You moved too fast, so sorry. Speed of light, you moved over there. Okay, sorry. Stephanie, go ahead.
Sorry to freak you out. Welcome new members of the PAC. My name is Stephanie Hood, the Director of Projects at CCTA, also the Innovate 680 Program Manager. Just welcome you all here, and we're going to go over a lot of items today, and for those who are new, Tim and I will reach out to see if you would be interested to have one-on-one briefings about the program. There's just going to be a lot of new things that you'll be here tonight, and to not step back like 3-4 years worth of conversations, we'd be happy to meet with you one-on-one to provide sort of an overview of the program. So, and then if there's anything you have questions on tonight, please do let us know. And if it requires a lengthier conversation, we can talk about that when we meet. So this item is for me, the normal standing item to provide an update on the program and the projects. Last time we met was in July because we canceled in October, so there's quite a few things to note here tonight. But just overall, for those who are new, Innovate 680 program is a performance-based program. Really, we would like to improve safety, efficiency, and connectivity on I-680, as well as providing more mobility options to create mode shift on 680, thereby improving quality and also more equitable access to transportation. There are 6 initial projects in Innovate 680, ranging from completing the express lane network on the Interstate 680 in the northbound direction, particularly part-time transit lane, advanced technology, shared mobility hubs, a mobile app called Mobility as a Service, or MOS app that you may hear, and then a pilot program for an automated driving system that you'll also hear tonight as a separate item. So these are updates for the past 6 months. Some of these are actually going to be a separate agendized item further down in the meeting, so I will skip those and focus on those that are not specifically a specific item for tonight. So the second item here is part-time transit lane. We've been waiting for guidance for operation of part-time transit lane from the state for a while now, and as we're waiting, we've been working on a testing and training program at the Momentum Station for the operation of part-time transit lane or bus on shoulder on the freeway at the Momentum Station. We received a grant from the state 2 years ago now, and we've been working on the design of the transit training and testing at Momentum Station, and we're looking to allocate construction dollars in the March CTC meeting for construction of this testing and training program at Momentum Station. Shared mobility hubs, we are focusing on 3 priority hubs. We've completed a feasibility study 2 years ago, and 3 were identified as sort of our priority hubs for us to implement. And these 3 hubs are to support a new 680 express bus that will be utilizing hydrogen fuel cell electric buses. The 3 hubs are at Bollinger Canyon Road, Martinez Amtrak, and Walnut Creek BART Station. So with a grant from MTC, we have begun preliminary engineering and environmental clearance for the Martinez Amtrak Mobility hub. We've been working with city staff on the concepts. We're actually planning to go to a farmer's market in late February to just talk about it with the public. And separately at CCTA, we've been doing these summer series or community series where we had visited actually the farmers market to get input on that hub, and we've been working with staff at city to discussed design elements for the past 3-4 months, so that's been going well. We also, since July, we had completed a few funding applications for implementation of these 3 priority hubs, a state grant, a solution for congested corridor, RM3 allocation, and another MTC grant to implement these 3 hubs. Doesn't advance. Oh, there you go, just low. Okay. The ADS project, that will be a separate item tonight. Jack will be presenting on the shuttles particularly, and he'll go over the latest and greatest there. For Mobility as a Service, that is a mobile app that we're developing, really sort of a one place where you can book a transit ride, a share ride, or even micromobility services. There'll be incentives to take transit, also to pay for your transit ride. So that's been going on for a couple years in development. We had paused work with BART for a little bit to save our budget as they resolve this connection with the trip planner for the app. But in the meantime, we've had gotten on board a car share vendor. We had executed a contract with them at the board level, and that beta testing is supposed to start this month. They are also getting the telematics ready in the vehicles in order to do that function in the app. For advanced technology, there are 2 projects, coordinated adaptive ramp metering, which is the next item that we will go over more extensively. The second project is adaptive traffic signals, or CATS. We've been coordinating with the local jurisdictions on a study, a feasibility study, and we have narrowed down 2 demo corridors, one of which received a grant from MTC in October to do system engineering, and that demo corridor is along the Danville, Hart, San Ramon Valley Boulevard corridor. And really, we would like to test an adaptive system where it's multi-jurisdictional as well as multi-modal. And this is a corridor that we selected because it does span a few jurisdictions: the county, town of Danville, San Ramon, and then also Caltrans at an interchange. So that's been going on for CATS. Also to note here, I see MEGA. We've received MEGA funding for this project in the value of $50 million. And I skipped the northbound because we are going over in a couple items. That also got a MEGA award, and about $116 million for construction. Next, this is a slide. It didn't make the packet because I thought I should add it, is to convey just where we are at and looking forward and sort of backward a little bit. So the past 3-4 years, we've been in sort of a planning mode, and that's denoted in sort of the yellow bars called project development. In the first 3-4 years of our program, we needed a lot of time to just coordinate with stakeholders. We did a lot of outreach with stakeholders as well as the public committees such as this, as well as your technical staff under attack, to go through these projects and coordinate with them their concerns and get buy-in and coordination with all of these, not only local jurisdiction, but Caltrans and the transit operators. 2024 was a year where we started to be in implementation, namely the shuttles, the automated driving system. That's in the third line on the third bar on the graph. We had deployed the 3 shuttles that are currently running. In 2025, we'll be in design for express lanes, the CARM project. The part-time transit lane will also begin the testing and training and Momentum station. So this is to convey that we're kind of stepping away fully from the planning mode and really gearing up for implementation and operation. And we're excited to be in that spot and just really thank this committee and the TAC really to provide us all the comments and feedback as we move the program forward up to this point. And that's all I had for this item. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions, comments? No? Okay. Is there any public comment?
We do not have any public comment. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. We will move on to the next item, which is informational as well, and be presented by Darren Henderson, Daniel Stanislaus, and, Ong Mong, all right.
Did you want to say?
I was going to try that, but I wasn't sure. I didn't want to butcher it too badly. To provide an Innovate 680 Advanced Technologies project update on the ramp metering strategy coordination for the Innovate 680 corridor.
Vice Chair Noack, I would like to go back that we did have one public comment on 4A, which was distributed to the committee earlier today, as well as posted to HTML by Brian Swanson.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thanks for going back and correcting us. Thank you.
Yeah, good evening, committee members. My name is Al Mong. I'm the acting Deputy District Director for Traffic Operations for Caltrans District 4. I will be providing an update on the Caltrans project as part of the Advanced Technology project for the corridor. Caltrans, we programmed an ITS ramp metering project back in 2020 for 680 corridor from 580 680 interchange to the Bayshore Road in Solano County. Original scope of the project when we programmed back in 2020 is the 36 miles of fiber, 51 ramp meter installation, and 9 cameras, 2 changeable message signs that you kind of see overhead signs on the freeway, and the 58 detection stations. The program amount is $100 million. You know, as we coordinate with our local partners, CCTA, we split it, the parent project that we programmed back in 2020 to 2 projects to accommodate and integrate the solutions for the corridor back in June of 2023. So when we split 2 phases or 2 projects, the phase 1 project is to install 45 ramp metering, 9 CCTV cameras, CMSs, VDSs as originally planned. The scope that we added to accommodate COM solution for the corridor is to install some of the infrastructure needed for the COM. As you can see, the last bullet, which is basically the mid-ramp cube detector boxes, fiber access for the system. We achieve RTL, which means they're ready to list. That is the milestone that we need to achieve to secure the construction funding from the California Transportation Commission. We anticipate to request, go for the allocation funding in March, California CTC Commission meeting. The contract acceptance on the plan construction completion is winter of 2027. The phase 2 project, so we kind of pushed that phase 2 of the SHOP project that we originally programmed to integrate more to accommodate COM strategy implementation. So that will include geometric modifications and the ramp meter for the northbound ramps at 4 locations: Bollinger Canyon Road, Crow Canyon Road, Sycamore Valley Road, and the Olympic Boulevard. There is probably you might get more information on it based on the MEGA grant award. There might be an additional location north of 24. So our plan on the ramp metering implementations for the I-680 corridor. So as you kind of see that there are a lot of ramps that we're going to be installing metering. And there's also a number of ramps that will have the COM metering solution. So our plan is to, as we deliver the phase 1 project, construction completion by 2027, we will activate the meters, but we're going to rest all the signal indication or the metering lights in green. And we're not going to circle it until the COM is ready. We will deliver the shop Phase 2 project with the COM segment 1 and 3A late in 2028. So the other coordination that we kind of working is, as you kind of see, CCTA consultant, we're gonna CCTA will operate and maintain the COM on the ramps that we listed. It will be a 3-year pilot, and the system will be transferred over to Caltrans after the pilot with the O&M and the licensing responsibility agreement still pending, that we still need to work out the details. And also to update scope of COM project deployment based on the grant funding, develop a fuzzy logic-based adaptive ramp metering for the ramps outside of the COM segments limit. We will continue to evaluate ramp metering strategy, including COMs, with the goal of basically optimizing the freeway mainline as well as the ramp operations as well. With that, I'm going to hand it over to you.
We're going to switch teams now. So my name's Darren Henderson. I am a technical director with GHD, and I serve as the corridor manager for the Innovate 680 program and also the subject matter expert for CARM. Since there are a lot of new people here, just a thumbnail explanation of what that is. CARM stands for Coordinated Adaptive Ramp Metering. It's a type of ramp metering strategy that's used with smart freeways projects, where we use the ramp metering as a tool to manage demand entering the freeway so that we can optimize the flow on the freeway. And if we can do that, we can get the freeways to be more productive and move more traffic over a longer period of time. Basically, stop them from breaking down and becoming congested so that we can actually allow them to be more productive. So we are going to be using ramp metering to implement that approach on the 680 corridor. The long-term vision is to implement CARM along the full length of the 680 corridor through Contra Costa County. So as you can imagine, based on the explanation that Ong just gave on the shop project, there's a lot of overlap with the Caltrans shop project. They were already installing ramp metering along the 680 corridor for shop. So CCTA has been coordinating directly with Caltrans to ensure that we can utilize the work that they're doing to help us implement CARM along the corridor. So we've been focused on CARM segment 1, which is the piece that's identified in blue on the map in front of you. Ong touched on that. For the shop project, it's called Phase 2. For us, it's called segment 1, so just to make it as confusing as we possibly can. It covers the northbound side of 680 from the Alameda County line up to Olympic Boulevard, just south of State Route 24. We will be implementing the CARM system on 14 ramps through that 14-mile segment, and ultimately operating that with the Streams operating system. As Ong pointed out, CCTA was successful in being awarded a mega grant. And while there is some uncertainty on the status of that funding, you may have noticed in the news that there was a change in administration, and that has had some, how should I put it, confusion in terms of the status of federal grants. But we are confident that at some point that grant award will be honored and that the mega funding will be made available to us. And that allows us to extend CARM further north to take on an additional 4 ramps north of State Route 24, and I believe there's another slide here to get into a little bit more detail on that. As I'm going through, if there's anything that you would like further clarification on, because a lot of you are new to it, I'm happy to stop and provide that further clarification if it helps everyone understand what we're talking about. Okay.
I'm not new. No, I've been since the beginning. What is the timing going on with respect to these ramps on 680 right now? What time of day?
So CARM is actually operational 24/7. So the ramp meters can come on and go off whenever they need to. So if the freeway is in a state where we're starting to see traffic increase. The system can call in ramp meters at any location along the corridor in order to help manage the demand so that we can, again, try to maintain that flow and try to maintain that productivity. So there's no prescribed time of day. They can come on 24/7, any time of day or night, depending on when they're necessary in order to
And these
get
are
that
turned
control.
on by a human or a machine?
By a machine.
Okay, thank you.
We will have humans that are watching the machine during, especially during peak operations. It is an active traffic management system, so we do actively manage it.
Okay.
So there will be the ability for humans to intervene if we do see either some anomaly in the system or a failure, or if there's an emergency situation and we need to turn the ramp meters off or turn the ramp meters on in order to allow fire trucks or something like that to access the freeway. There will be staff on call monitoring the system in order to allow for that intervention.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do you have a centralized operations center to do all that monitoring? Where is that?
The centralized operations center is actually a computer monitor, so it doesn't require a giant TMC. It will be operated, the operator will basically have a laptop that logs into the Caltrans system and allows us to remotely access the Caltrans infrastructure, as well as the cloud-based platform that's driving the control system. So it's not a big fancy center that is necessary. We will, however, be integrating the system with the Caltrans TMC so that they can pull data from the system to help populate their own freeway management systems. So there is a level of integration that happens. There's also a separate data management plan that's being developed as part of the Innovate 680 program. We're not talking about that tonight, but we probably will give an update at the next meeting. And that will also incorporate the ability to utilize the data that's coming from this system to help populate other systems and allow them to benefit from that same information.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Caltrans will only have access to the data, or will they be also able to actively manage these ramps as
Yep.
well?
So during the pilot period, they'll have access to the data, and they'll obviously be able to access the operators, but it's expected that the operations will be done by contractors for CCTA. As Ong mentioned, at the end of the 3-year pilot period, we will be entering into an agreement, CCTA will be entering into an agreement with Caltrans for the long-term operations of the project. It's anticipated that ultimately the operations will get turned over to Caltrans and that they'll get trained to operate the system and work obviously with the vendor that provides that software. For the long-term operations, in the short term, it will be operated by a contractor.
Okay. And I thought I saw in the prior presentation, there are display boards that will, I'm assuming, come on when the metering ramps are on, since it can be any time of day.
Yeah.
So people don't come whipping around the ramp all of a sudden to find a red light.
Yeah, correct. There are already ramp meters in other parts of the district. So if you've used them, Caltrans typically has a sign that indicates that the ramp meter is on, so it gives you forewarning. We're actually using those signs plus an additional VMS sign that will give you a little bit more information about the status of the ramp. So for example, if there's a crash on the freeway, we'll actually be able to put up a sign that says, "Do not come onto the ramp." I know I've been stuck on freeways before where I've turned onto the ramp and then realized there's a crash and it's like, oh, now I can't get off. So if we can provide that information in advance, we do. And so these systems will actually have more of that type of information available to help drivers get a better quality ride. And we can certainly get, as the project gets into design, and we develop more of that information, we'll be coming back to you and being able to share a lot more of the information about the design of the project, how it's going to look. And then, of course, once we get closer to operations in a couple of years, there will be a very robust outreach exercise to you as stakeholders, but also to your residents, so that they fully understand how the system works, why it's doing what it's doing. For example, they may see a ramp meter come on in a location where the freeway is not congested. And that can typically create a bit of a perception issue for drivers. Why is this ramp meter on if the freeway's not congested? But what it's probably doing is helping further downstream to regulate the traffic flow into a bottleneck. So we will go through a communications activity to educate the public on how the system operates, why it does certain things, so that way they are familiar with it once we are up and running.
Matt?
My question was kind of along the lines of that. So whether it's CHP-driven accident ahead, but how does it coordinate with like Office of Emergency Services, like Southern California had a wildfire situation, you know, you all saw things of the roadways being clogged, do the evacuations or, you know, God
So
forbid
I know-
something happened in one of our
Yep.
refineries, who controls getting that message out as quickly as possible, because there will be panic.
Yeah, there will
in
be
the
a rostered,
communities.
there will be a rostered staff person that is on duty and on call for any circumstance like that. So if a circumstance like that arises, there will be a point of contact for the operator of this system to be able to go in and override and do what's necessary in order to accommodate that situation.
Great, thank you.
Karen?
So I think that 880 has had ramp metering for some time,
Correct.
and so how is that different from this?
So 880 utilizes the ramp metering system that Ong was talking about, that Caltrans is installing in the corridor. It uses a different control algorithm. It's a more simplified control algorithm. While it does try to achieve some of the same objectives, this is sort of taking it to the next level so that we can achieve even better outcomes in the corridor. And so we're doing this as a pilot to demonstrate. You're looking very casual right now.
That's why he's sitting back there instead of up here.
Yeah.
Too late. We all know who you are. It doesn't matter.
Sorry, he threw me there.
Yeah.
Where were we?
So you were in the middle of answering my question about 880 and any differences, and that was more
So
simplified.
the intent of the pilot is to be able to compare, hopefully, to other ramp metering installations that are using the fuzzy logic that Caltrans uses, to see if it does make a significant difference, and if it does, then potentially implement it in other corridors in the region.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll
We'll
go
let
back
you
to the
go on. Yeah, go
presentation. So as I said before, the blue section is CARM Segment 1. That's the piece that is currently in design and was the first piece that was identified and funded. With the mega grant, we're now adding the ramps in purple that you see on the screen. It's called CARM Segment 3A. So that will carry it further to the north up to Willow Pass Road, and it helps, it overlaps with some of the express lanes completion locations that will be having ramp improvements. Again, as I said before, the intent is to ultimately install CARM along the entire corridor in both directions. So we are continuing to look for options to help fund additional CARM installations, particularly on the southbound side.
So you keep referring to a mega grant. What's the size of it, and what's the cost of this section?
So the mega
all of
grant,
680?
So CCTA got what, $169 million? $166 million from Mega. About 50 of that is going towards the CARM project. About half of that 50 pays for the 3-year operations of the software platform, and the other half of that 50 pays to extend it those additional 5 ramps to the north.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we have been making progress on segment 1. We've gone through the environmental process, and we did achieve a CECE back in April of last year. We've gone through the systems engineering process. We've got approval for our HOV priority lane exception. What that means is generally when Caltrans installs a new ramp metering site, they include 1 lane for HOVs to use exclusively. For CARM purposes, we feel that the ramps will operate more effectively if we don't include that HOV provision on the ramps. So for the purposes of the pilot, we'll be excluding those from the ramps. So we had to go through a process with Caltrans to get that exclusion approved, and that has been approved. The project report is basically finalized. It is with Caltrans. It's going through its final reviews, and so we do expect it to be executed by the end of February. Is that right? Is Francis here? There he is. Yep. So we're still on track for that. We have started final design at risk. Confident that the project report will get approved, and to try and keep the schedule on track, we've moved forward into final design, so that process has started. And through that process, we'll continue to refine the systems engineering documents that will ultimately dictate how the project gets deployed. So we've talked about mega, but we'll talk about it again. So there was a mega application. It did include $50 million for this project, as well as $100 and some million for the Express Lanes completion project. What it allows for us to do as part of CARM is to extend it further to the north. So we'll take it and have ramp improvements, some additional capacity added at the Buzzkirk ramp, as well as the Willow Pass ramp. We'll also be installing detection along the main line that helps support the operations of the system. So what that's actually going to allow us to do is to be able to use all of those ramps, extending all the way back to the southern end of the county, to better control the bottleneck that forms in this piece between 24 and 282 on 680. So this major bottleneck that's literally outside the wall here. So by extending the detection into that zone, we'll be able to see better what's happening as the conditions deteriorate, and hopefully be able to use the ramp metering upstream in order to better control the flow into that location. It is a federal grant, so it requires a 20% local match. And we are going to be subject to a project labor agreement. So that is currently being developed by CCTA.
Darren, does the part of the mega grant take care of the issue that we're having with ramps not having enough capacity to actually use CARM effectively?
Partially. It does help with the ramps at Buzzkirk and Willow Pass that we're doing those additional capacity improvements. The other ramps in that segment, it is not addressing. Some of them do get some additional capacity installed as part of the Express Lanes completion project, which is one of the reasons that we don't want to touch them. The Express Lanes completion project, as Stephanie will describe later, has a braided ramp scenario that will change the configuration on those ramps a little bit. So we didn't want to go in and build something as part of this project and then only have to dig it up and redo those ramps. So it doesn't fully deal with that problem, and I'm very glad that you remembered it. So that will continue to be an issue moving forward, and that will be something that we continue to investigate additional funding to solve those problems as we move forward.
All right, thanks.
And before you move on, I just had a quick question about the project labor agreement. So is that with the Contra Costa Building Trades, or who is that?
I will defer to them.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so that is with the Contra Costa Building Trades Council. So we're negotiating it right now. We just had our second negotiation meeting with them actually this week. It's going really well. We're just working out some of the finer points and details. So we've been pretty clear, though, that we don't plan to execute or bring the PLA to the authority board until we actually get an executed grant agreement for MEGA, since the PLA is subject to the funding of MEGA. And so that's kind of our approach right now. So in terms of the MEGA grant, obviously there's been all the executive orders, in terms of pausing federal funds. And Stephanie really worked really hard to get the MEGA grant agreement on the Secretary's desk before January 20th, and we were successful in doing that. It arrived on January 13th. We did a full court press, didn't make it happen. And so now we're basically waiting for all of this stuff to kind of, I'll say, transition. And next step is we're very optimistic. This MEGA program is a very capital-centric program. We're optimistic that the program will stay intact. I don't think it's a matter of if, it's more about when the grant agreement will get signed. And so I think it's important in CCTA and our staff is getting prepared for that time when the grant agreement's executed. So we want to make sure that the PLA moves forward, get it basically, I'll say shelf ready. And then the MEGA grant agreement is basically going through the process, and then we'll bring all that to the authority board for discussion and consideration. I would anticipate sometime in the summertime, most likely.
Thank you. That answered all my questions and more. So thank you.
Here's something new and different. Karen?
Oh,
you got your light on.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
Okay, sorry, Darren, we keep
No problem.
interrupting you, but.
No. This is the type of discussion that we need to have. It's far more effective than me just sitting here and reading slides. Just quickly, there are a number of things that we now need to do as a result of getting the MEGA grant. Obviously clarifying the scope of the work, going ahead and incorporating that into the ultimate design of the project. Tim already just touched on the PLA process that they're going to need to go through. Ultimately, the goal here is to get it all into a single construction package. We don't want a situation where we're constructing bits and pieces in separate packages. That just becomes messy. So the goal here is to sync all of this stuff up so that when we do get to letting a contract to do the construction and the implementation, it's all under one single contract, which looks like this when you see it on a schedule. No, not at all. So the very first bar is the shop project that Ong talked about, shop phase 1. So that one's moving forward. They are basically at the point of letting. Has it been let yet? Has the project been let yet? Yep, so it's basically getting ready to go to construction. We are a little bit behind, but obviously that was necessary because we needed that project to get designed to understand what the base footprint was going to be so that we could move forward with our design. As I mentioned earlier, we are starting the design process on our project, and that will continue for the next year or so, ultimately culminating in that merger of all the pieces coming together from the different segments into that consolidated construction package with the intent that that gets let in 2027, and we can look to start operating sometime in late 2028. But Tim is a very impatient person, so he is continually pushing us to move that forward. So we are definitely working on strategies to do that. So there was a executive steering committee meeting. For those of you that are not aware, Innovate 680 has a multi-tiered committee structure. You're part of that structure. On the agency side, there's a equivalent committee made up of the directors from CCTA, Caltrans, and MTC. They meet on an as-needed basis, but roughly quarterly to discuss similar items to what you're discussing today. So when we met back in August, they asked for a few things regarding the ramp metering strategy, both the shop and the CARM projects combined. As you may have gathered from this conversation, it is very confusing. There is a lot of overlap between the projects. So they asked for development of a roadmap that basically clarified how all of this stuff's going to get deployed, how it gets coordinated, and if additional funding can be found in order to implement on the southbound side so that we can maximize the benefits of the project while we are out there doing work, and what steps need to happen in order to achieve the O&M agreements both with Caltrans as well as you as the local agencies, because there will be implications to your own operations. So some of those issues have been addressed. The MEGA grant obviously has given us a funding stream that now allows us to close the funding gap on segment 1 and also now to expand further into segment 2. It does not allow us to do the southbound direction, however. The scope of the MEGA grant was only for the northbound side, coinciding with the Express Lanes completion project. It didn't include the southbound side, so we can't use MEGA funding for that. We did ask. But we were told very clearly, nope, that was not part of the scope. So we do continue to seek alternatives to advance the CARM deployment in the southbound direction. A big part of that is requiring vehicle detection. You know, one of the features of this is it's very data intensive. It requires very accurate vehicle detection so that we can see what's going on in the corridor. And so that has a cost associated with it, which is really the driver for the southbound side. South of 24, most of those ramps have been upgraded fairly recently. And so most of them have sufficient capacity that we would be able to relatively readily go in there and start operations. So it just requires us the ability to get the necessary money to handle the instrumentation in the corridor. So I'm going to turn it over to Danielle now. Part of the process is we had a series of meetings with the local jurisdictions to discuss the concept so that they could be familiar with it. They gave us a lot of meaningful feedback, and Danielle's going to go over that and give you a little bit of a summary of what that looked like, and then we'll be happy to answer questions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Danielle Stanislaus, and I serve as your stakeholder engagement manager for the program, and I'm also part of the systems management team. So I'm going to be wearing both of those hats for these next couple of slides that I cover. Many of you will recall, but for those of you that are new, as Darren said, we've done extensive legwork with each of your local jurisdictions and the transit operators, for that matter, to make sure that there is collaborative development of this CARM strategy and to make sure that we're working through the operations and maintenance concerns, because that's ultimately what the public cares most about. How is it feeling when they traverse the corridor? Is it safe? Is it reliable? And so we need to document all of that in an O&M framework. So when we had these series of individual meetings with each of the jurisdictions to understand their questions, their concerns, a couple of things really came to light. All agencies really did request having an O&M framework that's set up between CCTA, Caltrans, and each of the local jurisdictions, and that this O&M framework would cover operations for the entire corridor. So even though it's being delivered in separate parts, the look and feel and what the public experience is, there needs to be some thought given to that. It needs to document the performance requirements and thresholds that are expected, and it needs to clearly outline the roles and responsibilities, including how some of those operational issues get resolved in the communications protocol. So some of you mentioned the incident and emergency management provisions, things of that nature that are really important. So this O&M framework needs to account for all that, and we heard that loud and clear from your staff. So what the team has come up with is that there's going to be a couple of ramp metering agreements, 2 separate ones, but they are related. First, there's a memorandum of understanding, and that will govern the entire 680 corridor. And the parties to that agreement will be CCTA, Caltrans, District 4, and the local TAC member jurisdictions. This will outline the expectations for the deployment, the expectations for operations, and the time frame for that, right now it's under development, and a draft MOU is expected in the spring timeframe, March, April. Then there will be a separate specific agreement between CCTA and Caltrans for CARM Segment 1 and 3A. This will document the day-to-day operational roles, maintenance roles, and responsibilities that govern all of the equipment, all of the performance monitoring, and the evaluation. It'll outline the funding sources and commitments, and this particular agreement will be initiated after the MOU has reached consensus. So what does this larger MOU consist of? I'm not going to go through all of the sections here, but the ones that are in bold, I've highlighted for some particular emphasis because these are the sections that your staff cared the most about and that we want to have some discussion with you all on this evening. So no surprise, roles and responsibilities, who's doing what, where, when, how, that all came to the forefront. And so we need to be able to document that, as Darren said, for the day-to-day operations, since this is a 24/7, but also what happens for specific incident and emergency circumstances. Alongside of that, the communications protocols, outlining how that coordination and communication is occurring every day, who's fielding those requests, how are things getting answered, and what sort of unified response is there back to the public. And then last, the third thing that the TAC members really wanted to talk about was the specific performance metrics and thresholds. So both looking at the expectations for how the main line is going to perform, but also the specific ramps. And how frequently are we looking at performance, who's evaluating it, and if that automated system goes awry, how do things get resolved? So when we met with the TAC ConOps working group, so we met individually with all the jurisdictions, but then we have the collective group. And that group met back in September, and again, most recently, back on January 27th. We revisited the findings from all of the individual meetings, and we heard some additional feedback from your staff. There were lots of comments on making sure we set clear roles and responsibilities, including those outside of CCTA and Caltrans, making sure that we're specific on the roles for the performance monitoring, outlining those operational responsibilities for daily operations, but also the incident and emergency management, making sure that there are those formal communications protocols and that there is a single point of contact within each agency, and making sure that there is a plan thought out in advance for that consistent messaging. And then there were several comments on performance metrics, as you could expect. Some of the things that rose to the top were things like ramp queue performance and impacts, overall corridor travel time and safety benefits, specific comments on crash and violation rate. The TAC ConOps working group also consists of CHP, and so they've been particularly sensitive in wanting to make sure that we're looking at those things. And also our transit operators wanted to make sure that we're looking at things like on-time performance for our travel buses that are traversing the corridor. So where do we go next from a stakeholder engagement perspective? So we're meeting with you all today, and in a moment I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Nowak to help facilitate some additional discussion amongst you all. But after that, we go back to the program leadership team. They consist of the Deputy Executive Directors from Caltrans, CHP, MTC, FHWA, and CCTA. That group sits just below the ESC that Darren talked about, so we'll be cycling back to both those groups in the next month or two. And then there will be additional discussions with each of your jurisdictions and transit operators individually to work through the MOU agreement. We feel like that's probably best handled at an individual level. We'll convene the larger group when it's appropriate to do so. And as we've discussed with you all before, we do anticipate that as it gets closer to the time of operations, additional presentations will be needed to your city councils, additional outreach to the public, as Darren said, but we'll kind of cross that bridge when we get to it. So with that, there are a couple of questions, and these are very similar to that which we asked your staff during the TAC ConOps working group meeting, but there were a couple things that we wanted to hear from you all today. And so Vice Chair Nowak, should I just turn it over to you to help lead through this, or how would you like to handle that?
I can do that.
Okay.
I can read well enough. I can do that. Thank you. Thank you, Danielle. We'll go to the first question. Any initial questions regarding O&M responsibilities, CCTA, Caltrans, and our contracted operations and maintenance resources, anticipated obligations for local agencies for ramp meter equipment? Anybody have any questions on those? Karen?
So I'm looking at the last one on the screen, which had to do with crash rates, or whatever. So how is that measured? What program is that being used?
Did you jump to 3? I'm on 1.
Oh, you're on 1. Never mind. I thought we were, I didn't know 1 and 2 even had questions. I thought that was like a summary. Sorry, I'll come back later. Thank you.
That's right, I'll get to that. Go.
Yeah, how does this story end? Thanks,
Yeah.
Karen. Appreciate it.
The end. No. Anybody have a question? Yeah.
I
Carl.
do. So I'm just wondering what the costs are to the cities to maintain all of this and to support, you know, the whoever is in charge of the O&M, you know, the mothership.
There shouldn't be a cost to the cities. The system basically is going to be operated by the CCTA contractor for the pilot period. All of the physical infrastructure is being built on the Caltrans right-of-way, so there's no cost to the city for installing the ramp meters, any of that sort of stuff.
But long-term?
Even long-term, the intent is that it will be, you know, maintained within Caltrans right-of-way. Obviously, if you have a TMC and your staff are communicating, I mean, that's sort of an incremental cost, an incidental cost to what they already do. But there's certainly no expectation that there's going to be a direct cost passed back to the cities for any of this.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I have a more general funding question, but it seems like a lot of the funding is grant funding, of course, but that will be initial purchase, initial construction, capital costs. How does CCTA get funding for the operations and maintenance?
So the first tranche of funding is the 3-year pilot period. So the O&M for that is being funded by the mega grant, as Darren was mentioning earlier. And so that basically takes us into, if you deliver it in 2028, that takes you basically into 2031, right? And so the goal, but basically would be to start thinking about what's the roles and responsibilities after the pilot period. So that's really what we're thinking. So the whole purpose of the pilot period is to demonstrate to Caltrans the effectiveness of the system, and hopefully what will happen is either CCTA and Caltrans will enter into some sort of O&M agreement long-term to be able to take on the responsibilities past that pilot period. So the other key part of this is also going to be seeking additional funds through a future measure for CCTA. So that's another big part of this as well. So there's 2 components. One is seek additional funding from the state, either come up with a new roles and responsibilities between CCTA and Caltrans. In other words, potentially transfer the operations to Caltrans at the end of the pilot period, given the success of the project, or CCTA continues to maintain it, and that's really going to be really coming down to additional funding from a future measure. So like, well, in 2028 is, I mean, this is really up to the authority board, but we're considering, you know, going out with a future expenditure plan probably in 2028. And so that's really a big component of that expenditure plan is going to be future O&M funding.
Okay, thank you.
Robert?
Good, thank you. Darren, you know, in the jurisdictions that we all live in, put software together, and then all of a sudden we find 18 months to 3 years later, we got to update, upgrade, replace software. How do we factor those costs into these programs? And how long, in your opinion, do these softwares, you know, updates are required or new equipment being installed?
So this particular product is provided as a software as a service type of contracting arrangement. They are continually updating the product. It's actually been around for 25 years or so. They've used it on freeways in Australia now for a couple of decades. It's been used on a freeway here in the United States, in Colorado, as a demonstration project, and then RCTC is actually constructing a project right now as we speak, and they'll be starting operations of their current project later this year. So there's also another pilot in California. Yeah, to mitigate your concerns, the product is continuously refined. They're continuously adding enhancements. In fact, the product vendors were here in Contra Costa last month and met with Tim and Stephanie to discuss, you know, what they perceived as future needs for the product. They are, for example, right now working on AI and how to potentially integrate AI capabilities into the platform. It's also a much more encompassing platform than just the CARM element that we're using. It does a lot of other ITS, including arterial signal systems, and so there's the potential that in the future we could be leveraging some of these products to integrate between our arterial systems the work that's being done under CATS and CARM.
So it sounds like it's more occasional updates and not having to be an antiquated system that we need to replace.
Yeah, and they actually update the product continuously, and those updates are automatically rolled out to the client. It's like the operating system on your phone. I mean, it just continuously gets updated. Those updates get pushed to you, so you always benefit from the newest and latest version of the product. That's how they run their software.
Got it.
Questions on this side? No? Okay. No more questions? All right. I just have a quick question. Does CARM, because it helps the traffic on the highway, result in VMT increases? Or is that's not considered a VMT?
No, in the initial guidance, it was explicitly
Excludes that? Well, that's good. Okay, great. Yeah, I know, sorry. I won't mention that at an MTC meeting. How's that? Okay. Well, if there are no more questions or any public comment? Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't got to 2. I'm sorry. Yeah, I totally screwed that up. Yeah. Karen's ready for 3. All right, but we got to go to 2 first. Initial thoughts on communication protocols, process for questions, concerns, resolution of operational issues. Any thoughts on that, Carol?
So I'm just curious, who is the point person for this? Is that going to be you, Danielle, in the future? Or would it be someone within CCTA for all the cities to send all their concerned constituents about this particular issue to?
So I think in the near term, if there are concerns on the communications protocols or the development of those protocols, absolutely addressing them to Stephanie and myself is the correct way to go, and there's an ongoing dialogue and platform for that that already exists. I think for outlining the communications protocols itself, that will come from this O&M MOU process that I was outlining. So I think there will be more formal consultation with you all as that draft gets more underway and those start to get fleshed out. But we want to make sure that we're allowing for the feedback, concerns from anybody in that process. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions on 2? Okay, 3. Any additional performance metrics to support evaluation? And I'm not going to read them all, but I know Karen wants to speak first, so.
Okay. Sorry, thank you. I just wanted to ask about the last one, which had to do with crashes and crash rates. It has to do with, I suppose, where the meters and the cars come together. And what program is that using it? Is it one that we already have in our city?
Yeah, so CHP, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I turned myself off. CHP maintains crash records on the state highway system. They have a couple of systems. One's called TASIS, and I can't remember the name of the other one right now because I'm on the spot.
Is that Switters?
Switters, yeah, that's right. The truth is that they have some limitations in the quality of the information that we get and sort of how conclusive we can draw results. However, we will use those as tools to evaluate and observe if there are any notable increases or decreases in crash rates, both on the ramps and on the main line. Obviously, we can also use anecdotal evidence. The other interesting thing is, I mentioned before that one of the keys to the project is we have to significantly enhance the detection capabilities in the corridor, basically the quality of the data that we get for traffic flow. We can actually use the traffic flow data to really clearly indicate to us when we've got crashes in the corridor. They are very clear in the heat plots that we generate for traffic when there is a crash, because it obviously has a very abrupt change in the traffic conditions, and it's almost a pinpoint that you can see. So we can even use the normal performance data that we get for traffic flow and travel times and speeds and volumes to also triangulate against the TASIS information to try and draw conclusions on whether or not we're seeing increases in crashes.
Will that give you information whether or not it's bikes or motorcycles or cars or pedestrians?
The TASIS reports give you that information.
TASIS?
Yeah, TASAS.
Thank you.
And the SWITRs is the other one. Yeah, they give you information on the nature of the accident, like where it occurred on the roadway and who was involved. But again, sometimes in the way it gets reported, it can get a little bit muddy as to what exactly happened. But again, they're tools that are there, and we do use them to try and evaluate crash rates.
Thank you.
Anybody else on 3? Ken?
I just real quick ask, I haven't looked at a 555 in a long time, so will that give us, will SWITRs and that, those programs give us numbers specific to the entrance ramps in the sense of if there's a collision on the ramp? Because what I remember of 555, it was within a certain proximity.
You're going to answer that?
Because I don't want to pick up, unless it's directly related to CARM, I don't want to pick up arterial crashes that are within that 200 or 250 feet of an on-ramp. I can't remember what the distance was.
The TASIS database is maintained by Caltrans and CHP. So all the crashes that happen within the state right-of-way, the data includes that. Crashes outside of the state right-of-way on arterial, it would be more on the SWITR.
I just don't want to get ancillary, unless there's a direct relation to the metering on the ramp. I don't want to get, let's say, Willowpass Market, you're getting on at that on-ramp, not that that's part of CARM, but, due to a collision on the roadway being in close proximity to the entrance ramp, suddenly it falls in our kind of realm, and it really had no direct relation.
Yeah, well, that was part of the limitations that I was alluding to. So, I mean, we're obviously aware that that is a situation. But what we would be looking for is like significant changes in trend, not so much pinpoints of like, and so, those same limitations would be inherent before and after CARM implementation. So, it just becomes part of the rounding errors in these things. What we would really be looking for in the crash data is, are there any significant changes in crash rates overall? Like, are we seeing an elevation in crashes around the interchanges, or are we seeing a decrease? Or, that's the type of information that we would be looking for to try and draw some conclusions.
And for everyone's information, TASIS is Traffic Accident Surveillance and Analysis System.
You had to look
And
that up.
SWITR, I had to look it up, it's been a while. Statewide, SWITR's is statewide integrated traffic record system.
Yeah. I never played with the other one, I only played with SWITRs.
And what was the first one again?
Yeah, it's been a while. Traffic Accident Surveillance and Analysis System. And like Ong was saying, basically that's the Caltrans system, all within the Caltrans right-of-way. And keep in mind, the Caltrans right-of-way goes beyond the on-ramp and off-ramp. Like, it goes basically down to the local intersection there at the ramps and even beyond, typically about anywhere from 400 to 500 feet, and sometimes even to the next adjacent intersection. Sometimes Caltrans right-of-way would go. So that's their access control that they usually have, and that's all reporting on the TASIS within their right-of-way.
And SWITR reports everything. I mean, municipal agencies, every agency that takes traffic collision reports, they're reported to SWITRs, and that's how we track a lot more, too.
Okay.
And I'll just add that CHP, our partners at CHP have, of course, mentioned that safety is paramount. And so while, as Darren said, we'll be looking at the data feeds first to identify some of this, there is the ability to use those cameras that Darren and Og talked about that are being installed to also as secondary validation of what the data is showing. And then as a final step, there's also having then the field review, whether that is our own staff, the operations and maintenance contractors, or whether that is CHP. You know, we're being very sensitive to not asking for extra enforcement and things of that nature, but we have a couple of different layers of validating what's happening, particularly at some of the new merge points and things of that nature.
Robert?
Good, thank you. Darren, how is weather factored into performance metrics?
So we do log unusual weather events, like not if it's just raining, but like if there's an extreme event, you know, you get snow or something like that here that would be very out of the ordinary, or a major flood or something like that. We do note those in the observations. Generally, we've found though, we don't like to manipulate the performance reporting too much because it starts to get a little bit subjective in terms of what qualifies and what doesn't. So when we did our project in Colorado, originally we were going to try and exclude, you know, it snows in Colorado, in Denver, of course, so we were going to try and exclude snow days and all that sort of stuff. And we ultimately decided, no, we're just going to use the data exactly as it is, good, bad, ugly, whatever the conditions may be. That's what the traffic has to deal with. And we found that that gives us a better quality comparison from before and after. So just to dial it back a sec, so we will be doing before and after comparisons in order to allow for that type of comparison. So the expectation is, you know, once we are instrumented in the corridor, we'll run for a period of maybe up to 3 months where we're just collecting data from those systems while the final setup's taking place. And then when the metering gets turned on, there's soft launch, hard launch, and we'll be tracking over those different periods of time so that we can compare, did we see any major changes from before and after? But obviously, if there are any really anomalous conditions like a wildfire or something like that that causes, or COVID for that matter, that we would be able to note, you know, those things in the records. And there are obviously databases that have robust information about what the conditions were so that we can start to exclude those if we need to.
So average traffic time, average travel time will just sort of be an average throughout the year with the exception of extreme weather or extreme condition, but it's the average from January through December.
Yep. And we pull that directly from the control system.
Got it.
Like it aggregates all of the information it's receiving continuously, so we're able to get a very robust performance monitoring. There'll actually be a dashboard that gets created that will be accessible to all of you to be able to log in and on any given moment in time, see how the system's performing. It will have comparisons to historical data. You'll be able to go back and retrieve archive data if you want to see how it's performed over the last 6 months or whatever. So there will be very robust performance information available to all of you to be able to monitor it for yourself.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? Jean?
Yeah, thank you. I'm assuming, though, that we would also be looking at year-over-year data instead of specifically the previous 6 months, for example, if it goes into effect in April.
Yep.
We're not going to look at, you know, the 6 months versus the previous 6 months because that would be very different, winter versus summer kind of things.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's obviously other data sources that we can access to give us that year-to-year comparison. Obviously, they have limitations in themselves, but again, they can give us an indicator of trend. Because as you say, if we start operations in October, you know, we go, or we start collecting data in October through the holidays, and then we start operations in February, well, those are two very different conditions. So it's not necessarily fair to make a apples-to-apples comparison in that case. So yeah, we can use things like PEMS or some of the big data sources to get sort of aggregate measures of performance in the corridor and see, okay, did last February compare to this February?
Okay.
The ramp metering violation rates, is that just when somebody moves forward before the light turns green?
Yeah, and both the system measures that. Like the system will know when someone's crossed the line when the signal's red, and so it will tally that for us. But also there will be normal CHP enforcement in the corridor for ramp metering violations, so we'll be able to track if there's any significant changes in their issuing of violations.
Is that being tracked right now on ramps?
They do when they're enforcing ramp meter violations. You can get that information from CHP. They don't do it very often, but They do enforce periodically.
No, but that's actually a ticket if you
Yes,
jump ahead.
yep.
Ken?
Well, maybe just to keep in mind, we're not automatically enforcing
No.
the ramp metering. I think the differentiation though is right now existing ramp metering, the way it's enforced is there's a CHP pullout area and they have to actually have CHP sitting there to even realize that a violation even occurred. In this particular case, the system will actually know if there was a violation automatically. We're not enforcing it because we're not allowed to legally to do any automated enforcement, but it's good to know where those things are happening, because if we see trends and violations, then we can send CHP out and actually sit at the ramp meter, right? And so that's the whole point. So I think like and I want to just maybe make this comment about this. This is, I think we tend to focus on just the ramp metering, but this is about next generation management of the highway. Like this is about looking how we're managing the corridor. You're getting better data. You're looking at trends. You're really focusing and proactively managing the corridor, you know, and the ramp metering is the main tool of that. But this is about like proactively looking at this corridor every single day, every single hour, and making sure that this corridor is actually working, you know, and that's what this system's all about, you know, and that someone's kind of overseeing and proactively managing the reoccurring congestion that's happening in the corridor.
So this is not cameras at the on-ramps?
No.
You know, okay. We're not looking at any of that in the future?
No, the system just tells us if for some reason we're seeing a lot of cars cross the threshold on red, it will tell us that that's happening. It adjusts for that, like it will change the metering rates. If someone just blew a red and it will slow down the metering rate so that way it can compensate for that. The other thing we can do, of course, is if we get that information we're seeing we're having high violation rates, we can then work with you in the communities to go out and do more public outreach on why it's important to not violate at those locations. So, carrot and stick.
Yeah, seems like a very important component to all this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important, like the trends is really important because you're looking at the why. Like why is the corridor performing this way? And then we can go into the corridor, you know, even maybe like on a 6-month or annual basis and almost like audit the corridor and try to understand like what's happening in the corridor? Like why'd this ramp perform the way it did? Or why'd this happen the way it did? You know, and this is really taking that more proactive management approach. And this is what the Australians do. They do like an annual audit of their corridors because they have such good refined data of the corridor. They know exactly what's happening in the corridor, by lane, by ramp, and they're able to proactively audit the corridor and see exactly, okay, what are some fine tuning or tweaks we can do in the corridor to improve the efficiency and the productivity? And in their mind, if they're getting just 1% more productivity at the corridor, then that's a success, right? And so that's what we're trying to do is we're trying to really squeeze all the productivity that we possibly can out of the corridor every single year.
So this audit is done by an outside consultant or in-house?
It'd be done in-house.
In-house.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, number 4, any other suggestions for MOU before we move on? No? Oh, Mark?
It's not a suggestion for the MOU, but just a broader question. You know, talking about the future and the corridor and things like that. How does this tie in, or how does it affect like transit buses on shoulder and things like that? And more near term might be how do emergency response vehicles and things like that get through if we're kind of jammed up on the ramp?
So this is like music to my ears. This is about getting into more of like the systems coordination of the whole corridor. And so now, as you start integrating different systems and different modes into the corridor, like for example, like right now, bus on shoulder can only operate in the shoulder when the speeds on the adjacent lanes go 35 miles an hour or less. And so when does the bus driver know how to do that? Or when do they know it's 30 miles? So they can do it old school, look at their speedometer and then get into the shoulder, or what they can do is we can provide that data directly into the vehicle potentially and actually give them like a green light and a red light of when they can be in and out of the shoulder. And that'll help with basically CHP enforcement, et cetera, and reporting on that. The other element of this is emergency service vehicles. So if we've got an actual operations center and we're able to see what's happening in the vehicle in real time, then we're able to actually work with dispatch, right? And tell them exactly what's happening in the corridor, where can they be exactly to either respond to an incident. So as we getting into managing the corridor, using this technology, where our goal would be to, respond to incidents faster, remove incidents faster, like really think about like how to actually, improve the throughput in every single way in terms of non-reoccurring, which is accidents, and reoccurring congestion.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anything else?
I'm sorry,
Jean?
I have one more along
I'm
those
usually
lines.
pretty good about getting meetings moving along, but
Well, we new
I'm
people.
I'm
we've
losing my
got-
touch, clearly.
We've got questions, we're new. The automated ramp meters, this software, does it cooperate with signal priority for emergency vehicles and potentially transit buses as well?
Yes,
Integrated.
so the way the ramp metering works is, and this is already demonstrated down in San Diego on the 805, and we actually toured it, but basically what happens is the ramp meter will have the ability to actually hold hold red on the ramp meter, so that way the bus can transverse through the ramp meter, or through the ramp safely. And so it's really, again, leveraging these coordinated systems to really make sure the corridor is being operated safely and more efficiently.
Anyone else? No? All right. Thank all three of you for all that and answering all our questions. Appreciate that. Do we have any public comment?
We have one remote comment from
Okay.
Elizabeth Ames. I'll ask her to unmute now.
Okay.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes?
Hi, this is Liz Ames. I'm one of your BART directors, and I just want to give you guys a shout out. I'm so excited about this project. I have been tracking you for, I don't know, since 2019, and I know San Diego is really great on Bus on Shoulder, but to see this project happen is exciting because I get super commuters. I'm in Southern Alameda County, and 680 goes through my district and down into San Jose, and apparently Plan Bay Area 2050 has this corridor, 680 corridor with a bus system going from Martinez all the way to San Jose. You're probably aware of this, but I'm really excited to see this project getting attention from the MTC, because that's a huge corridor from Martinez to San Jose, and that it would be a bus service using Bus on Shoulder. And I really think you all are a leader in this area for Northern California. I know San Diego's been doing this for at least almost 15 years or longer. And I think Australia, I think I saw a presentation from this group that they did this in Melbourne. And my question, I guess, from that discussion was probably from 2019. But I think there was a commitment to increase the vehicle volume on the roadways by 30% because of the efficiencies. And I know you probably don't want to hear this because this is probably a BMT impact, but the idea would be to increase the vehicle volume efficiency on the interstates. And I thought that would be a performance metric that you would want to measure on the efficiency side. But hopefully the vehicle volume also includes the buses. So just wanted to give you guys a shout out, and thank you for all of your work over the years. This is an incredible project. Thank you.
Darren, did you want to respond?
Sorry, the information that the speaker's referring to, in Melbourne's projects, in their initial deployment, they saw an improvement in their traffic flow, not an increase in their volume, but the flow that they were able to sustain during their peak periods went up about 25% during the peak period. And what that meant is that they were effectively getting another lane's worth of capacity out of a 4-lane freeway. Do the math. So we're not necessarily trying to increase the overall volume in the corridor. We're trying to make the flow more efficient so that way drivers are not spending as much time on the roadway. We can maintain productivity during those peak periods and eliminate some of those major congestion that we see today.
Yeah, and just to flow, it's not about VMT. It's so the measure is basically per car, per hour, per lane. So it's more focused on traffic flow and density, and so you're improving because you don't have people sitting in traffic. You're able to improve the productivity and the traffic flow of the corridor based on, because you don't have that congestion. So the whole concept is really to really get to speed harmonization. That's really what it is. And so that when you look at traffic flow theory, the optimal speed for traffic flow is 35 miles an hour. That's when everyone's traveling 30 miles an hour, you get optimal traffic flow and speed. And so like in Australia, what happens is they actually have what's called LUMs, like lane use management systems. So they actually have variable speed limits that are actually enforced, which we're not allowed to do that here in California, but like ideally we'd love to do that in the future, but they actually require everyone they drop the speed limits down to 35 miles an hour during peak periods, and it's enforced automatically. So you have to follow the speed limit. And so by bringing the speed limit down and by then controlling the ingress and egresses of the freeway using ramp metering, basically during peak periods, which actually has the same, so M1 in Melbourne, who has the same amount of traffic flow that 680 does, M1, during peak periods at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I've witnessed it personally, it never stops. It's basically constantly flowing at 35 miles an hour because you're managing the actual traffic and congestion. So, and that's because it never stops, you're getting that 25% additional productivity out of the corridor, which is basically a whole nother lane. We have a 4-lane facility. So that's what we're trying to accomplish with this project. Now, variable speed limits is a whole nother nut to crack, but one step at a time.
Okay, thank you. We're ready to move on. Next item, no more public comments?
No more public comment, thank you.
All right, great. The next item is informational, will be presented by Stephanie Hugh to provide us an update on the Innovate 680 Express Lane completion project.
Good evening again. I mentioned we canceled the October meeting, so we didn't get to give you all an update on the alternative selection for the northbound express lane completion project. We spent many meetings about the alternatives, so I'm going to hopefully make this quick as we have already arrived at the selected alternative, but just to provide an update on what's gone on. So basically, for those who are newer, the goal is to complete the existing express lane gap on the northbound 680. On the map, the gray line is the existing express lane, so you'll see the southbound is completely completed with express lanes. On the northbound direction, the gap is in the colored portion, the light blue, pink, and light blue. That section does not have any managed lane. It doesn't have an HOV. It doesn't have an express lane. The express lane ends currently in Livorno. To the north of 242, there is an existing HOV lane. The project is proposing to convert that HOV to an express. And the varying alternatives basically is that center portion with the light blue and pink and how to address the gap. And I'll go over it quickly here. The project purpose is to reduce peak period congestion and then also reducing travel time on northbound 680, encouraging carpool and transit use, also improving travel time reliability, encouraging those non-carpool users or offering them a more reliable travel option with the express lanes. The project addresses the need for congestion relief, a continuous express lane system, and also tackling some of the traffic operational struggle or challenges along the corridor, especially at the Treat Lawrence Way area. So before going through the alternatives, these are what we call key design elements, and each of the alternatives that we study have a combination of these things. The first one is the HOV conversion to express. That was that dark blue area that I showed on the map earlier. This first design element is actually common to all the 4 build alternatives that we study. The second one is realigning southbound 680, which is really to make physical space for a continuous northbound express lane in the area of the 24 680 interchange and where the BART goes over 680, and that's always been a challenging area where that is the reason why we don't have a continuous express lane. So in order to do that, some of the alternatives have this realigning of 680 southbound to physically make room, and that would be shifting the southbound 680 roadway and the westbound 24 roadway to the west, like into the hillside in order to do that. Braided ramps is basically separating the Treat Boulevard off-ramp from the North Main Lawrence Way on-ramp, that weaving conflict by separating those two movements with gray separated ramps. 2 ramps are vertically separated to basically alleviate that weaving conflict. Fourth one is lane addition, basically physically adding a lane, either by restriping or widening to create a new express lane. And then lastly, the general purpose lane conversion is to convert the inside lane, the regular inside lane, to an express lane. So these are the 5 key features that are, a combination of these will appear in the next slide, which are the 4 alternatives. So alternative 1C is what we call closing the gap, is basically completely closing the express lane gap with the southbound 680 realignment that I explained earlier, like shifting the roadway to the west. Alternative 2 leaves a smaller gap, which is in pink, but creating or building a new express lane in the light blue area. And alternative 2 also includes the braided ramps at Lawrence and Treat. Alternative 3 is basically 1C plus 2, completely closing the gap of the express lanes with the southbound realignment and braided ramps. Alternative 5 is reducing the gap, again, leaving that pink area with no express lane, no HOV, but the light blue will be to convert an existing inside lane to an express. And then lastly, no build, we have to study all these build alternative against no build to see the difference in the effectiveness of the alternatives. So in terms of cost, these are the 4 alternatives that we studied. You will note that alternative 3 is the most costly. It involved closing the express lane plus braided ramp, so it has the most features or elements. One thing to note is the middle three rows 2, 3, and 4, is for VMT. So alternative 1C, 2, and 3 have some form of adding a lane or adding capacity for this new express lane. So therefore, there are VMT implications of induced VMT, meaning if you build it, it will come. Like if you build a new lane, you will induce traffic. So 1C, 2, and 3 have VMT mitigation costs relating to the Senate Bill 743. If we induce VMT, we need to mitigate for that impact. So the project cost is on the bottom row, including the VMT mitigation, and again, most costly being alternative 3. Alternative 5, the last column on the right, is the one where we're converting the existing general purpose lane to an express. That is exempt from VMT mitigation because we're basically repurposing a general purpose lane for an express. So we presented to the public a draft environmental document with those 4 alternatives plus no build. The circulated document was from May 8th to June 24th. We did a lot of outreach through the electeds on our board with their newsletters, through regular newspaper, our social media, and just getting the word out about the draft environmental document and seeking public's input on the alternatives. We also produced 2 videos. One is to explain what is VMT, and the other is to explain those alternatives that you saw, which is a lot to take in words. So we thought having a video would be best to explain all the alternatives. And you can find those on YouTube if you're ever interested. We held 2 public meetings, one that was virtual, one that was in person. The in-person one was actually in this room. We had Q&A sessions, we had poster boards, we had a presentation, and then just be available with interpreters for those who need it. At the end, we got 82 distinct public comments listed here. 4 out of the 82 were more so seeking information, so then there are actually 78 comments about the alternatives. In summary, our key findings is that from the 78 is that 17 of them did not really include any support or opposing any of the alternatives. In general, they were commenting on their concerns or issues about Interstate 680 or the express lanes. 32 of the comments did not support the GP conversion, the converting of an existing lane to express lane. 19 comments supported the express lane construction with adding capacity, so either 1C, 2, or 3. And then 13 favored doing nothing. And then comments some key themes of the comments was related to traffic congestion, VMT, just environmental justice and equity about having an express lane, and then air quality and GHG. So in September, the project development team, or the PDT, consisted of CCTA, MTC, and Caltrans met in September and selected alternative 2, which is to reduce the gap, leaving a small gap, that pink that we saw between just north of 24 to North Main with a gap. And then the rest of it is to build a new lane for this express lane. And these are some of the key reasons or evaluation criteria that we went through. Alternative 2 is the only alternative that didn't actually, was not detriment to SR 24. The other alternatives actually creates a backup of 24. In terms of safety, alternative 2 includes the braided ramps, which helps to alleviate that weaving conflict at Treat and Lawrence Way. This alternative will not include shifting of the southbound 680 roadway, as well as that 24 connector going westbound. So it does not have any non-standard design features in that area. It is the lowest cost in terms of, from the capacity increasing alternative 1C, 2, and 3. In terms of construction impact, it has the least amount. It avoids shifting that roadway on southbound 680, which avoids closing the southbound Olympic off-ramp for about 11 months. So alternative 2 will not require that. It is consistent with the Plan Bay Area 2050 plan. In terms of VMT, we have proposed a fully mitigating plan for 20 years. And because alternative 2 leaves a gap, it does reduce the least amount of VMT across the build alternatives that increases capacity. From the comments that we received, alternative 2 stood out because it did not convert a GP or general purpose lane. And then also, just for future, this alternative, when we built it, it does not preclude closing the gap in the future if that's a desire from our stakeholders or the public. So it doesn't preclude doing the closing of this gap in the future.
Sorry, I keep saying induced VMT, VMT, vehicle miles traveled. What does induced mean?
Induce means if you build a lane, the concept is that when we build a lane, it encourages more driving. So then more people will drive. So then with the SB 743, we need to create projects or find mitigation strategies to offset that additional driving that this project is encouraging. No, you're welcome. Okay, environmental clearance timeline. Looking ahead, like I said, we selected the alternatives in September. We're gearing up towards finishing the environmental clearance in June 2025. So that's in 4 months. Just touching upon the MEGA award, we've been mentioning it already. We received award of the MEGA grant in October. $116 million will go towards a phase 1 for this project. Basically, everything north of 24. There's a gap there that's noted. That's alternative 2 that's shown in this picture. So the MEGA grant covers everything north of 24. Tim mentioned that we've been working very hard on that agreement with the feds, and it's sitting at their desk and hoping that we can resolve that soon. We are working with Caltrans to start design concurrently with the current effort to complete environmental clearance to expedite the delivery of the project. We're also looking at the delivery method of progressive design build and have been talking to Caltrans executives about getting that in motion. Also, we've talked to MTC about our funding plan. We hope to utilize some of the Regional Measure 3 money that we have, as well as other BAFA funding if possible. We're also needing to amend the memorandum of understanding that we have of MTC and Caltrans to basically memorializing our roles and responsibility, delivery schedule, and just escalation ladder and procedures regarding this delivery method. So that's going to be in the works before we get into construction. And then also requiring regular check-ins with the executive level staff just to make sure that we're on the same page and resolving any issues as we go on. Yes?
I just want to chime in to maybe give you a better understanding of what progressive design build is. So The Iron Horse Trail pedestrian overcrossing that we're building right now in San Ramon, so that was using a delivery method called construction manager general contractor. And so what that means is, as you're designing the project, you're bringing in the contractor during the design phase to help basically, improve the quality of the design and deal with methods of construction, estimates of construction materials, how would you actually, literally how you're going to build the project. And that doesn't normally get done in a normal delivery process. Usually you do what's called bid build. So the designer, assumes how the project would get built. And then basically you put the project out for bid, you get bids from construction, and you're basically doing a low bid, right? And whoever the lowest bidder gets the project. That's bid build. And so this is progressive design build, and it's a qualifications-based selection. So you go through a qualifications selection, you issue an RFP, and basically you're hiring a progressive design build team that basically has the designer and the contractor on the same team. And then they come in and they basically do the project. So the idea is that when we do start design concurrency with environmental clearance, the idea is to get the design to about 30% at a level where we can get quality bids from a contractor. And the reason why we want to do progressive design build, and the reason why we're using CMGC, is because it gives us more cost certainty and schedule certainty on the project. So for example, on the San Ramon project, we typically on a project will estimate, change orders up to about anywhere from 5 to 10% of the total cost of the project. San Ramon, we've only gotten 3 change orders, and they're all under $1 million. 3 change orders, which is well below the threshold of basically, I think it's actually less than 1%. And it's been for basic 10,000, 50,000, couple 100,000 here and there. So been really very, very successful. And we want to make sure we continue to maintain that cost certainty and schedule certainty, because quite honestly, in terms of the funding plan for this project, the only kind of, I'll say contingency of funding that we have is really going to be from basically MTC and regional funds. And so the whole idea is to really provide that cost certainty around the entire project. So that's why we're looking at progressive design build. We literally just got the authority of that through legislation last year. It's a brand new delivery method to be able to deliver allow local agencies to deliver in the state highway system. And this potentially could be one of the first in the state to be able to implement that by a local agency. So I just want to make sure you're fully aware of what that means, because it's a really big deal. It's a really big deal to do progressive design build.
Stephanie?
Thank you. I think that was my last slide.
Oh, okay. All right.
Any questions? Happy to take them.
Any other questions, comments?
Hey, Tim, just out of curiosity, the progressive design build, the architect gets paid, the engineer gets paid, contractor gets paid as well?
Yeah, so actually what it is the contract is with the contractor, and the contractor pays the designer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so on CMGC, it's a little different. CCTA is kind of the mediator, I guess you could say. So basically, we enter into an agreement with the contractor, the designer, as well as an independent cost estimator. And we have to basically kind of manage the marriage between the contractor and the designer during the phase. And so with progressive design build, that's not the case, because you have a contract directly with the contractor, and the contractor pays the designer.
But the designer qualifies, the engineer qualifies, contractor qualifies. That becomes the team. Contractor doesn't pick the architect and engineer.
Contractor picks the designer.
He picks the designer, okay.
Yeah. So we basically pick the team of the contractor and the designer. The contractor can pick whatever designer they want. So we're relying on kind of them coming to us with a really good contractor designer team.
Yeah. Good program.
Okay. Anything else? Deanna, do we have any public comment?
We do not have any written or public comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item is information will be presented by Jack Hall to provide an update on the Innovate 680 Automated Driving Systems Project. You guys are fast. I'm just looking up for you to move, and you're already there. All right.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Chair Anderson, I think remote still.
Yeah.
And committee members. My name is Jack Hall. I'm the Intelligent Transportation System Connected Autonomous Vehicle Program Manager. And tonight I'm going to give you an update on the Automated Driving System Project. So we have 4 autonomous vehicle projects that are part of the Innovate 680. Presto Martinez, Presto Rossmore, Presto Bishop Branch, and the Personal Mobility Project on I-680. And Presto is our name that we've given to these, to our new kind of program. So this slide lists, oops, sorry, didn't do the slides. Okay, so the benefits of Presto are listed on this slide, but I like to just kind of emphasize the increased connectivity to transit and also to provide more mobility options. So we launched Presto Bishop Ranch in April of 2023, and we've carried more than 2,147 passengers since launch. Presto Rossmore launched in July of 24, and we have carried more than 889 passengers, and Presto Martinez, which launched in September of 24, has carried more than 191 passengers. So this is the slide of our program status, and this program started in 2020. But one I want to highlight here is the site visit by FTA on November 19th of 2024. Was Danielle Diggs with FTA, she's our project manager, and Ashley Nyland from the Office of the Secretary. They toured all the sites and had rides, and they were very pleased with all the operations. So during this visit, FTA, we asked for and they approved a no-cost time extension to June of 26. This extension will allow us to collect more data from the vehicles, and that's an important thing that we took for safety reasons and for policy decisions. So we're learning a lot during these operations of on AVs. Issues that have come up are connection issues with satellites, charging issues with batteries, and getting data from like robotics packages. So the vehicles, you could have like a Toyota Sienna, but then they put a robotics package on it. And so to get that data out, sometimes it's tough. And on the Rossmore project, it's a local motors shuttle. However, the robotics package is by OXA, and so we weren't able to get that. I want to also give a big shout out to Lindy, as she's done an exceptional job on all our media events, and this one was on August 1st. The project was very well received by the Rossmore residents, and we are currently planning on expanding service in the community. The vehicle operates Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Again, this is data collection is a big part of this grant that we received from FTA. And as part of our final report to FTA, we will provide vehicle data for their use. We could not get data, as I mentioned, from this particular vehicle, so we installed cameras to collect the data needed. And FTA, again, will use that data for safety decisions and policymaking. This is our Presto Martinez. One highlight of the county hospital project is collaborating with County Connection and the county hospital. We're still working on maximizing service for the hospital, which has taken some time. Hiring more autonomous vehicle operators, or AVOs, and workforce development are two of our main focuses on this project. We are also working to train AVOs on the 211 system. Again, Lindy did an outstanding job on the pre-fuse celebration held last September, which was well attended by County Connection, the county hospital, the city of Martinez, TransDev. They provide the AVOs. They're a sub to County Connection. FTA was there, and CCTA. Presto Martinez is open to the public from 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m., and then it's also available to the hospital only from 2:30 to 6 p.m. And we're looking to expand those hours to start at 8 a.m. Data collection has been better on this project. Main Mobility, they actually run the robotics package, and they can share the data easily with us because they own it.
Hey, Jack, is this, excuse me, is this project currently on hold now? Because there's an insurance
Oh, yeah, on the
issue.
Martinez project, right now we have a pause.
What's the update on that? And the backstory is the autonomous vehicle operator carries insurance for the car, and then County Connection has a driver, and when the driver touches the steering wheel, the insurance for the autonomous vehicle operator no longer exists, and the driver has to have his own insurance policy. Are you guys trying to work through that? Because it's kind of a crazy deal.
Right. So I work on that. Like Tim was in my office this morning. Like, Jack, this is your number one thing. So right now, the current status is TransDev. They provide the AVOs. They need an agreement or insurance policy directly with May Mobility, and there's been some issues about how much insurance coverage May Mobility has, but they don't really want to release that information because it's a trade secret. And so the agreement is that they're going to write an attorney's going to write a draft agreement that says we'll cover you no matter what. And so that's the status of that. And so that was supposed to come out today, and we would be starting operations tomorrow. But I have
So
not
you start
seen it.
operations when?
So that agreement, we need this agreement between TransDev
Yeah.
and between and May Mobility. That I was expecting that agreement this afternoon, and it did not come through. So,
So apparently they had a fender bender. What was the outcome on the fender bender?
so May Mobility covered that,
Ah, okay.
and they do cover. So they've been saying from day one they're going to cover, but there's actually no agreement in place between TransDev and May Mobility. It could be May Mobility does a lot of projects with TransDev, and so this is, and they even state, like, this is not on this project only, it's globally how their May Mobility is operating.
It just doesn't feel like it was really well thought out, you know, when all of a sudden a driver touches the steering wheel and he has to have his own insurance versus the automated vehicle company having their own insurance. It's like two separate policies, which doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Yeah, there was some issues, but that actually was not the case. So that isn't the case. That it's not between going manual mode and automated mode. So we're learning a lot, and so in the future, I mean, going through these things, it really hasn't been done a whole lot, and so we're learning as we go.
Yeah, and just maybe on your point, we go through a whole risk analysis of the project before it gets deployed. And so, based on that analysis, I mean, we work the County Connection, May Mobility, obviously insurance is extremely important. CCTA, we have an umbrella policy. We cover all of our projects, you know, in terms of all the incidents. And then we have County Connection, we've got May, and we've got TransDev. And so what we've learned is this really just a nuance that we did not really quite think all the way through. Because it's, like you said, it's basically like you've got an AVO, hands off the steering wheel. The May is doing everything, and then once you have hands on the steering wheel, now you need insurance for that, you know? And so you have to keep in mind that we're like in uncharted territory here. And so this is a whole process of really learning as we go and really making sure that we have everything like super dialed in. But the whole process is, and to Jack's point, like we're learning exactly what needs to happen, you know, and mainly because this project has like 3 different parties involved. It's got County Connection, TransDev, and May Mobility, you know, and we thought we had it covered all the way through to the project. And so, so we're fixing the issue. We put a pause on the project, and the pause actually started roughly about 2 weeks ago when we kind of learned about this nuance, and then, and we're trying to fix it through this agreement between TransDev and May Mobility.
Yeah, thank you. So then this is our third project, which is Presto well, actually, this one really isn't a Presto, but it's a personal mobility on I-680, and it's broken into 2 parts. Nissan operates a level 4 Nissan Leaf through 5 high-volume intersections in Bishop Branch and San Ramon, and then they continue along a 2-mile stretch on I-680. So working with the city of San Ramon, we've installed 5 cameras which validate the maneuvers. So on this one, when they go through, the vehicle doesn't actually talk to the intersection, but we have cameras that validate the maneuvers and the data that the vehicle is sending back to us. And then the second part of the project is called Cooperative Congestion Management, and then Tim did an outstanding job earlier tonight talking about, this was kind of like a speed control on the freeway, on the main line. So what they do here, Nissan drives 5 level 2+ cars, actually it's 4 + 1 probe car, and they try to maintain 20-second separation. And as the vehicle's going down the freeway, they project, or they send their speed up into the cloud. There is run through an algorithm, and then the ideal speed to keep the traffic harmonized on the main line is sent back down to the vehicle. And it actually has been working on the tests. So it's to get the ideal speed for keeping the traffic moving smoothly. And even with this small penetration of vehicles, the data has shown that it's positively affecting the traffic smoothing.
And could I ask, what time of day are they doing this?
So that was a big part. We wanted to make sure the congestion was there and not stopped already. So we test typically at 3 p.m. We leave from San Ramon and then go north towards Walnut Creek.
And how far, does it stop at the
It's like
Walnut
North
Creek?
Main. They get
Got it. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I literally got a demonstration of this yesterday. And so basically we started roughly around 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the afternoon when congestion started on 680. And so you could see the probe vehicle, the 4 other vehicles, and as we were traveling through the corridor, the vehicle is getting a signal from the cloud, and the vehicle, the driver basically had hands off, and the vehicle was actually being told how fast to drive, right? So the vehicle was actually being controlled in terms of speed from the cloud. And so the whole idea behind that was to really speed harmonization of vehicles in the corridor. So I remember I was talking about how speed harmonization is really important in terms of variable speed limits. Getting those speeds in the corridor with vehicles is extremely important. And the whole idea through connected vehicles is to really get these vehicles to kind of do the harmonization coordinated. And so the idea here is that we believe that even with like a 2%, and even better, 5% penetration of controlled connected vehicles in the corridor, we'll be able to smooth out traffic flow in the entire corridor. And then you do that in conjunction with the ramp metering, and now you've got basically controlled flow in the entire corridor. So similar to what like the Australians are kind of doing, and probably even a more enhancement. So that's kind of the idea. And obviously it's a huge liability issue to tell a vehicle how fast to drive. And so the idea is to actually rely on sending a message into the vehicle, either through the infotainment system or through like a mobile app, to be able to tell the driver the optimal speed to drive in order to reduce congestion in the corridor. And that's really kind of the incentive. Now, we all know people don't follow speed limits, and so that's a whole nother conversation. But this is about how do we leverage technology to really control and how to harmonize the speed in the corridor so we can improve traffic flow. It's a really cool project.
Yeah, so then we had a meeting after the test run, and this one professor from Berkeley, Alex Bain, he's pretty high. He's in the ITS, or Intelligent Transportation System. Him and Tim, I mean, they were talking the world on that. It was really pretty exciting. Vertiports and all kinds of stuff. So it was good. So then this slide shows the data that we collect. And acceleration, deceleration is an important data point. This indicates smoother traffic. If people are not accelerating and decelerating, that means they're driving smoother. So that's one of it. Reduces phantom traffic jams and congestion. And then that concludes my.
I just want to add one thing to this, and I just want to stress the reason why we're spending so much time on the data in this presentation is because that is what the main goal for FTA is for this grant. So this is just to kind of as a backup for new members. So CCTA received an automated driving system grant back in 2019. And so we are one of 8 recipients in the United States. We were the only local agency. Everyone else was a DOT or a university. And FTA loves this project. And the reason why they love this project is because the other 7 projects basically did either a 2-month or like a 3-month basically pilot or demonstration, or they did like a research project. This is the only project out of the 8 that actually is doing, I'll say, commercial, full-blown deployment for basically over a year, and we're able to collect data directly out of the vehicles. No other grant recipient is doing that. In fact, when FTA was here, they basically said, Tim, CCTA has tackled a problem that DOTs are even struggling with right now in terms of how to actually collect real-time information and data directly out of a vehicle, put it in a cloud, and actually perform analytics on it. So, so when FTA was here, so it's kind of funny. We did a whole full day demonstration. Jack took them all over the county or all over the 680 corridor. And so they came here to meet with me to debrief. And I walked in and I talked, and there was also someone from the secretary's office as well with Danielle Diggs. And so I walked in, I said, so did we meet your objectives and perform? And they're like, you exceeded all of our expectations in terms of how you delivered this project. So, and all that does is basically just result into, one, street cred, but two, potential to get more funding in the future for these types of projects. And right now, CCTA is working with other entities across the country to basically develop like an ADS 2.0 program. And we're pretty confident that in this administration, there's gonna be some really big things around autonomous vehicles and connected vehicles. And so we're preparing for that. And you probably know why.
Yeah. Jack, do you know the split of the numbers for the Martinez Presto as to which ones were from the hospital and which ones were in that evening 6 to 9:30 slot?
Not right tonight, but I can get that information.
Okay. I'd just be interested to know where the split was in that. Any other questions?
I just have a clarification. Jack, what is Prepare Corridor for Widespread CAV Deployment? And I noticed there's a diagram with 4 orange colored cars with CAV on them. What does that mean?
So that's probably Project 3, the personal mobility on I-680.
It's Project 3. Yes.
Right, so that one, our initial application, this project's evolved quite a bit over time. Right, I mean, it kicked off and COVID hit. And so the vendor on that project was Intel Mobileye, and they dropped out of the project like day one. And so then we had to go out and procure another vendor, and it was Nissan is the vendor. So we were working with Verizon and Nissan, and then it was gonna be more connected, but now actually you can just use your phone to connect. So that's what we described on the cooperative congestion management. That's the connection. It's not actually hardware. It was gonna be hardware put out on the freeway, like DSRC, dedicated short-range communication radios. However, that did not take place. And FTA signs off on all the changes on that.
So I'm going to say I don't understand much of what you just told, Robert, because it's talking about highway shockwaves, and CAV is corridor or something management?
CAV is a connected autonomous vehicle.
Yeah, so the diagram you see on that slide, it's trying to illustrate that coordinated autonomous mobility platform. So the cloud up top is the Nissan Seamless Autonomous Mobility Platform. So what's happening is that cloud is collecting real-time traffic information off of the corridor, and so it sees what's happening in the corridor. Then what it's doing is, based on an analysis, what's happening in the corridor, it's sending messages to those 5 vehicles, and it's basically telling the vehicle how to basically, what speed it should be at, and kind of braking to be able to basically eliminate or minimize the shock wave. So a shock wave in a corridor, let's say, for example, someone slams on their brake for like no reason. All that does is create a shock wave in the corridor, right? And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to eliminate those shock waves because that causes congestion. And that shock wave could be either someone, weaving, merging, someone diving into an off-ramp or something like that, some idiot driver, right? That creates congestion because it creates like a shock wave, right? And so, so the whole idea is when that shock wave is created in the project, right? The whole idea is to use these connected vehicles, these connected autonomous vehicles, as they continue to penetrate and commercialize, tell them how fast to go, how to brake, to be able to smooth out that shockwave and that congestion in the corridor. So that's what
Sorry, I've never heard of shockwaves, and I've been coming to these meetings in Harrison, how many?
Yeah, so that's what a shockwave is. A shockwave is what happens is like, there's like some sort of braking, like maybe someone is, like, you know, people follow too. Yeah, people follow too closely and it creates braking. Yeah, yeah. Right, shockwaves are on the highway. Yeah. So CAV is Connected Autonomous Vehicle. Yeah, Connected Autonomous Vehicle. So, and that you need a connected, you don't need necessarily to be autonomous, but you definitely need it to be connected in order to receive those messages from the cloud, to be able to tell the vehicle how fast it should go to be able to smooth out that traffic flow. Yeah, that's what the cloud is there for.
Carla?
Thank you. So I have just a few follow-up questions. So why 5? And 5, you said there's 5 Nissan, are they Leafs, or I don't know what they are, but 5 Nissans. And then how does it work? Are they in like a little caravan where they're like 5 in a row? I'm just trying to visualize how this works so they have impact.
Yeah, so the reason why there's 5 is that's all we could afford. And so that's why there's only 5. We wish we had more. The original grant proposal actually called for 100 vehicles by Intel Mobileye. But when they fell out of the project, you know, we went out for a proposal and we were only able to get 5 with Nissan. And so that's why there's 5. We wish we had more, quite frankly. But we did, again, to Jack's point, we did see benefit with even just 5 vehicles in the corridor. In fact, one of the really cool statistics is that it actually, the software, the way you brake and the way you control the vehicle, it actually created a 2-second safety envelope around the entire vehicle as you're in the corridor, which is huge because that's basically almost twice the amount of reaction time that any human will have in terms of slowing it. So it provides a tremendous amount of safety benefit in the corridor. So, the way it works is that, and Jack said in the presentation, is each of the vehicles try to maintain like a 20-second gap in the corridor. And the reason why for the 20-second gap is because there needs to be regular vehicles in between the other vehicles. Yeah, so you want to have enough gap to have enough vehicles in between the probe cars and the fleet cars. And so what's happening is that as it's seeing what's happening in the corridor in real time by using cameras and data, then you're able to actually say, okay, well, these vehicles are going, 65, 75 miles an hour. There's a bottleneck up top, right? And so basically you're telling the vehicles, okay, now if you travel at 55 miles an hour, we can actually, minimize that bottleneck and reduce and improve traffic flow. So it's really just a matter of just like separating the traffic more, because another reason why for cause congestion is people are following too closely, right? And so people are hitting their brakes and everything. So that's what creates shock waves. And so the idea is to really get people to kind of separate. And then by separating everyone, by using these connected autonomous vehicles, it helps smooth out the traffic flow. And what we'll do is there's a YouTube video that UC Berkeley has. It shows a bunch of vehicles driving in a circle, and it demonstrates exactly how the algorithm works. It shows the vehicle braking, and as the vehicle's braking, all the other vehicles that are not connected actually are harmonized behind them automatically. So it's basically just traffic flow theory, and also we'll make it a point to send out that YouTube link so you can actually see exactly how the algorithm works.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Oh, public comment.
We have no written or public comment, thank you.
Thank you. Next item is informational, will be led by Danielle Stanislaus to gather any additional feedback from members. Danielle.
Thank you. So this is just the regular open call for any particular items that you guys want to discuss at your next PAC meeting. Of course, the team will continue to make sure that we agendize key decisions, key discussion points for all the projects. But if there's anything you heard today that you want to hear more about, please let us know.
No ConOps chart?
We held that back specifically, but if you would really like that front and
No,
center next time.
No, it's okay. Just had to ask.
You know?
Yeah. Anybody have anything? Okay, great. Thanks, Danielle. Public comment at that? No. Okay. Next item is still Danielle on the Policy Advisory Committee meeting schedule for 2025.
Yes. So since we had to cancel your October 2024 meeting, you guys did not get to officially set the meeting schedule for this calendar year. So this is just some unfinished business. So as you can see, there are 2 remaining proposed meeting dates for you all this year, keeping with that quarterly cadence. So it'd be Wednesday, July 9th from 6 to 8 p.m. and Wednesday, October 8th from 6 to 8 p.m. Oh, and I'm sorry, I skipped over April 30th. I'm already getting ahead of myself. So 3 more, April 30th, Wednesday, July 9th, and Wednesday, October 8th. So the recommendation is that staff recommends approval of the PAC meeting schedule for the 3 remaining meetings for 2025.
And could I just ask a question? Because we're meeting in February, and I know we are off in terms of the meeting cadence. Is there enough to talk about in 2 months? In April?
There's always plenty to talk about.
Well, this is a whole group of elected officials. We can certainly talk, but I just didn't know if there's something like a meaty agenda. That was all.
So I believe there are a couple of items, Stephanie, the shared mobility hubs, a couple of other things that were
We're
up
hoping
on deck.
to bring forth an update on shared mobility hubs. We touched upon it very high level earlier in the program update. That was one that we were hoping to bring forth to this group. The continued conversation about those MOUs, I think the next step is for us to meet with your staff one-on-one, and so maybe there would be more updates to that as well.
And then Darren also alluded to the program data management plan, which I'm sorry, Vice Chair Nowak will necessitate looking at that system of systems diagram again. But we were hoping to brief you guys on that, since obviously you can see this is a very data-driven, performance-based system. So that's what was up on deck, if that.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay.
Jean? And
Yeah.
then
I wanted to point out that many of us, not all of us, are city council members, and the October 8th date conflicts with the Cal League of Cities conference in Long Beach, so some of us wouldn't be able to make that October 8th meeting.
Okay. Thank you for noting. We can follow up, and if there's a designated alternate, I don't remember offhand if you have a designated alternate, but we could look into if that's
even the alternates might be at
Yeah,
Right.
I think the alternates would mostly
Understood.
be, yeah.
might
Okay.
be a different date. Kevin? Or was that was the same thing? Okay, all right.
I'll be here. We got snacks. Just kidding.
Yeah, the bar
Cover for
guy.
y'all, yeah, but I got you covered. So you guys have a great time in Long Beach. Yeah.
Noted.
Okay.
So I'd suggest we go to the one Wednesday after that. I'd be very happy to always have third Wednesdays, because
We got CCTA then.
Authority board
That's
meeting.
authority board meeting.
oh, that's still going on, okay.
Yeah, that will always go on.
Maybe we can come back next time and propose a new date for October to bring for this.
If you all would like us to look into a different date in October, we can come back with one
the
for you.
next meeting.
Yeah, because I think that's why we canceled the last October meeting, was for that reason, wasn't it?
Now seems like that's.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah. So
Uh,
we'll check with Terry Ann, who has maybe more of knowledge of different committees, and we'll bring back forth the
Okay.
October date.
Okay.
And I just to say, I agree wholeheartedly. The majority of this committee are city council members, and typically they do attend this. So let's find a time where we're not conflicting.
Okay, thank you. Public comment? On the
I've not
calendar?
received any public comment,
I
thank
didn't
you.
think so, but anyway, I had to ask. We need a motion for this. Wow, okay, it's an action item, so I need a motion to approve the calendar excluding October 8th at this point.
So moved.
That's correct.
Wow, all
Second.
right, we got a motion and a second.
I'm having flashbacks
Rin,
here.
Store, Rin and Store, first and second. What? You're too far away, I only hear you when you're sitting next to me. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Member Armstrong,
Yes.
Member Carlson,
Yes.
Member Josie,
Yes.
Member McKillop,
Yes.
Member Obringer,
Yes.
Member Wren,
Yes.
Member Stepper,
Yes.
Member Storr,
Yes.
Member Wilk,
Yes.
Vice Chair Nowak,
Yes?
Chair Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our regular agenda items. We have no correspondence in the packet. And with that, I'll go on to item 6, which is the adjournment until the April 30th meeting at 6 p.m. So thank you all.
If you want to geek out with me over here, I can show you the Nissan video.
Recording stopped.